Serious. What's something that mentally and or emotionally broke you? You/everywhere all nowhere responded. I was in therapy and was nervous about my child's upcoming birthday party because of serious anxiety issues. She told me to imagine the worst thing happening, and when the party is over I would realize everything was okay. Day of birthday party, I received an out-of-state call from a coroner. My mom was found dead in her apartment. An investigation occurred, but it was determined she had a diabetic episode, hit her head on the kitchen counter, bled out and died. An hour later my friend arrived, hysterically crying, indicating she just got a call her mom died. I was numb and broken. Life has never been the same since. You/Marcy Manus 47 responded. When the police told me my fiancé had been killed by a drunk driver immediately outside of our neighborhood. It didn't help that the police lost the driver in the hospital, letting him escape for about 30 hours. Edit. I was fortunate to have a great network of friends and family to support me. Part of what really helped me was giving up on the idea of justice or that things can be made right. That helped me sever the tie to the accident, acknowledge my fiancée and remember her for her life and not her death. Additionally, my parents and I established a scholarship in my fiancé's honor for students like her, young women in STEM fields. That helped me keep her memory alive and salvage some of the goodness in the world we lost when she was taken from us. You/Jinx 614 responded. I'm a nurse and I've seen so many awful things, but for whatever reason one that sticks with me and pops up in my memories often happened in nursing school. I was doing clinicals, student nurse working in hospital, and my patient's son had died in a car wreck the night before and the family was coming to tell him during my shift. When they arrived I stepped out to give them privacy, but I heard his cry. The sound a parent makes when they are told their child is dead is something that will chill you to the bone. He also happened to be on telemetry, a heart monitor, and I was watching his rhythm when he got the news. He threw several PVCs and I swear it was like watching his heart break. You/OK Lead 9868 responded. Watching my grandma on my mom's side go through hospice. I have never seen a human slowly deteriorate like that. I was happy to think I would get to spend some time with her and comfort her because the year prior my other grandma died unexpectedly and I never got to say bye. As each day went on she slowly lost any ability to think or properly communicate to the point that it was like her mind was already gone. When she was close to death she was making these gargling sounds that sounded like she was drowning. That sound alone is something I will never forget. It was the worst experience of death I have ever experienced. It was literally watching a person you loved just slowly fade away mentally. The amount of weight she lost in just those few days. You/Calvacade responded. I was going through the beginnings of a divorce, unbeknownst to me. It was March 2020, and my birthday just happened to be on the day they announced the initial COVID lockdown. I got home late from work, and my wife at the time had done nothing for my birthday. I was in my 30s, didn't really celebrate anymore anyway. But no card, no gift, not even a mention of my birthday, and she'd eaten the last of my post-work meals. And of course everything is shut down and closed early, so I go off trying to find a gas station for a protein bar. I'm not really that put out, it's par for the course. But I wake up early the next morning to take care of our 6-year-old. His autistic and emotional connection isn't always the highest on his priority list. But I'm in his room at 5 in the morning and he says, "Daddy, it was your birthday yesterday. How come you didn't get any presents?" I made something up and he asks, "Will you get any today?" I say, "Probably not, pal, but it's okay. Grown-ups don't really celebrate birthdays like kids do." He goes into his closet, gets all his construction paper, and starts taping it together. Then he starts wrapping up his own toys and arranges them in a pile of presents. He says, "This is for you, Daddy." And he and I opened up presents for my birthday. I don't remember a lot of my birthdays, but I remember this one. You/Superdiscodave responded. 10 years ago I was falsely arrested for a DUI. I was acquitted, but I lost everything in the processes. It wasn't just the arrest, it was the whole system and procedures along the way that broke me. I had always defended cops and the judicial system, but you would never know unless you are pulled through it. First, after the arrest, I was fired. I was a bar manager for a huge HOA near Yosemite. I guess they thought of me as a liability, but when I asked why I was fired they said, "We don't have to give you a reason." But I later found out that was the reason. Then I just watched my house, foreclosed, my car, stolen and destroyed, and everything else, storage auction, went away. By the time I was arraigned it was all gone. I watched how the DA kept extending and prolonging the trial saying he was still investigating while my court-appointed lawyer kept getting me to plea bargain. I had to show court every time, so all they were trying to do is get me to not show. Nobody cared if I was innocent, they just want their conviction percent to stay high. Anyway, I was found not guilty in 10 minutes by a jury. It took 5 years of my life and no lawyer would call back when I wanted to sue. Cops are untouchable. I'm a whole different person since this occurred. You/deleted responded. Life in general. I've been through so much bullshit people don't even believe me anymore. My father abused my mom, and when she ran away, he started beating me. I told the schools when I was 6, and they just turned around and told my dad everything I said. He told them I have a vivid imagination, and then proceeded to chuck me off of the roof of our house when, keep in mind, I was 6 years old. He hit me in the head with a metal bat when I was 9, shot me with a BB gun, tried to stab me, hit me in the head with beer bottles, and coming home from school to see him slouched over with a bottle of pills in his hand thinking he was dead wasn't fun either. Ultimately became homeless at 12 and worked at a McDonald's on night shift when I did school during the day from 12 to 18, then stayed at McDonald's until the beginning of 2020 when I finally got a tax job. I could never go to homeless shelters because if the cops find you, they just drop you off at the border of another state, I won't say which ones. I've seen it to many people I knew during my time on the street. Now I'm finally away from the worst parts of my life, but the trauma is even worse. I can't sleep. I can barely breathe. I have heart problems and I'm sure I'm just one bad day away from going into a mental breakdown. I've seen murders, assaults, mutilations, and everything else. You/random shit writing responded. I was actively suicidal and had recently attempted suicide. I was sitting in my bed with my mother, and she looked me in the eyes and told me that she wasn't going to play my game anymore and said that I was purposefully manipulating her and was hurting myself to hurt her. It absolutely destroyed me. I used to love my mother unconditionally. I thought she was the best mother ever and that I could trust her no matter what. It was like she hung the moon and stars. My relationship with her has never been the same since she said that shit to me, and I don't think I can ever get over it. You/il_ad9037 responded. Parasailing accident. Boat pulling us lost all electricity after a larger boat passed and it crashed hard over the wake. I was 800 foot in the air, attached to a steel contraption with my 2 kids on either side of me, with a mass of ropes above us leading to the parachute sail. It created enough drag that the impact wasn't as horrific as it could have been, but plummeting hundreds of feet through the air into the ocean and then realizing the metal contraption is pulling you and your kids under. My son couldn't get on his back so his life vest wasn't working properly. My daughter was screaming because her arm was tangled in the rope. My son was 7, she was 9. Coast Guard was called in for rescue. Fuck. It was in 2020. I will never be the same person. I have flashbacks every day. Edit to add, my kids survived. Sorry if that was unclear. You/deleted responded. Seeing my mom and dad fight every day, and not divorcing. The most heartbreaking was when I saw my dad crying while my mom was screaming at him during an argument, and I had to intervene and hugged him and got him some water to make him stop crying. Wiping tears off my dad's face broke my heart that day. And then went to my mom to do the same. That was actually the first time I ever hugged my mom and my dad. And that was to stop them from arguing while both of them were crying on my shoulder. Sad. During another argument when my mom went to sleep constantly crying, I woke up next day while she was praying loudly and still crying, and I touched her shoulder and she freaked out. And started acting like a mentally ill patient, screaming and crying and physically pushing us aside as if she was scared of us coming closer to her. I guess either she was exaggerating, she does that a lot, or she was actually deeply traumatized by that particular fight. My life is filled with even more traumatizing events, but these are the most recent ones. Edit. It's so heartbreaking to know so many people were robbed of their childhood because of the bad relationship between their parents. Please feel free to reach out if you ever need anyone to talk to. Sending you hugs. You/Laurier responded. Multiple things. Being a kid, I was raised in an elitist way, grades before everything, to the point I got slapped if I ever got a bad grade. Uncle killed himself. University, couldn't handle the pressure from my parents. Saved my dad from an attempted suicide a few years ago. I can still hear the screams of my mother when she couldn't wake him up. Sounds silly, but my cat was 19.5 years old and died. It was very, very difficult. If you have anything that broke you at some point, seek help from a professional, they really can help. You/Datumaki responded. My first love committed suicide. I walked in while she was bleeding out but couldn't save her in time. I held her in my arms and when help arrived she was pronounced dead and I was accused of murder. They put my name in the paper and all, and when it came out I didn't kill her, they didn't make any attempt to correct it, so I lost my job, my home, everything. To this day you can find my name in archives for murder, but not a single statement that I was proven innocent. About 15 years later, my father hung himself, to which I discovered the body. Thankfully by this day and age people investigate before accusing. U/Kvoth Dresden responded. Breaking up with my emotionally and verbally abusive girlfriend of 6 years after she missed my dad's funeral to get her dress fit for a wedding. Watching my dad waste away from cancer only a few years after he quit being an alcoholic, having to accept that although I got close to it, I would never truly get to know him as a friend or father. Losing tens of thousands of dollars going back to help my family through the death of my dad, selling vehicles, maintaining and fixing multiple homes in different states, and not being able to process it myself, only to have my mom tell me she wished it was me who died instead of my dad. Lost my grandpa the year before. Meanwhile, I was processing childhood sexual abuse, severe neglect, accepting I don't have blood-related family I can depend on, and got laid off. Too much all at once. Ketamine therapy saved my life. U/Thatlow and Guy responded. Messing around with polyamory in my marriage which led to a very hard split. I should have checked myself into a hospital during that time. I'm very lucky I didn't permanently end things for myself. Edit. Just throwing this up here because my comment created some discourse regarding whether polyamory works or not. It's not right for me, but it is right for her. I also did not have a healthy view in it and basically just used it for sex with others because I didn't want to build relationships with other people other than my wife. I had great sexually experiences. But when the relationship between me and my wife collapsed, it left me in a place with no support system because my friends were originally her friends. I was questioning my masculinity and sexuality greatly, and I was completely wrecked from the experience. It has taken a lot of work on myself and therapy to be at a place of happiness now. U/accomplished_yak_733 responded. Being cheated on and lied to by my fiancé. Turned out she'd lied about almost everything for years. Narcissistic personality disorder. Total abuse. Went from engagement to hatred and total trash treatment. Tell people I'm not shit in public and in private, apologizing and saying I didn't deserve any of this. Lost my house, lost my pride, lost a lot of my life. Total shame. Edit. Thanks for all the upvotes and the kind comments. I almost took my life, things got so dark. I never post on Reddit and I keep pretty private and underground on here, but hearing from everyone was really heartwarming. U/ATF Alpha Tango Foxdirt responded. I used to enjoy baking, I thought I was devent at it. Mostly followed recipes, but I would tweak them to try and improve. Most my friends seemed to respond positively and not just in a being nice way. They'd actually ask when the next time I'd be making thing they liked was. But in anger the person I trusted most wanted to hurt me, and said I wasn't that good. People were just being nice about it, but the standard pre-made stuff was better and my tweaks made things worse. I haven't really done any baking since. It just killed any love I had for it. I still cook, I enjoy cooking, I just don't do baking anymore, the desire died that day. U/Moleman0815 responded. My mom died, which wasn't that bad, because she was very sick and our relationship wasn't the best, and I was too overwhelmed with the aftermath and everything that I passed the time I could reject the heritage. She left me nothing, so I was left with all the costs for the funeral, the eviction of the flat, open bills, new bills from the hospital and so on. Plus the situation in my job was very bad at that time. I felt rejected, had not much to do and was constantly thinking about quitting, which I couldn't do because we were depending on my salary. So one day on a Sunday I just broke down. I wasn't able to do the minimum tasks. Bringing out the trash? No way. Cooking meals? Nope. Luckily I live in Europe, so I got to the doctor, was diagnosed with a deep depression and went home on a paid sick leave for 6 weeks. I never thought about me having a depression because my imagination about a depression was totally wrong. I ever thought a depression means sitting in the corner of a dark room and crying constantly. Nope, I was in a good mood, cheering with my wife and watching movies, but thinking about the invoice gave me a panic attack, cold sweat and shivering. U/Gobs of Goblins responded. Realizing my family wasn't the picture-perfect loving family I had always believed it was. My parents weren't always too strict, so I idolized them, and my siblings tolerated me most of the time, which seemed better than what my friends had. Took me years to realize that what they were doing wasn't love. It was backhanded and cruel in ways that made me vulnerable. I always thought I was the problem and deserved any anger or backlash I got, even when I knew LD done nothing wrong. I just thought that they would never hurt me, so there must be a reason they're upset. Eventually I learned that mental abuse is still abuse. Even if they rarely laid a hand on me, which still happened, especially with my dad, they were still causing me harm. Only really realized it when I got into my current relationship and was loved unconditionally and not ever treated harshly, instead communicated with and worked with. You/Moleman0815 responded. My mom died, which wasn't that bad, because she was very sick and our relationship wasn't the best, and I was too overwhelmed with the aftermath and everything that I passed the time I could reject the heritage. She left me nothing, so I was left with all the costs for the funeral, the eviction of the flat, open bills, new bills from the hospital and so on. Plus the situation in my job was very bad at that time. I felt rejected, had not much to do and was constantly thinking about quitting, which I couldn't do because we were depending on my salary. So one day on a Sunday I just broke down. I wasn't able to do the minimum tasks. Bringing out the trash? No way. Cooking meals? Nope. Luckily I live in Europe, so I got to the doctor, was diagnosed with a deep depression and went home on a paid sick leave for 6 weeks. I never thought about me having a depression because my imagination about a depression was totally wrong. I ever thought a depression means sitting in the corner of a dark room and crying constantly. Nope, I was in a good mood, cheering with my wife and watching movies, but thinking about the invoice gave me a panic attack, cold sweat and shivering. You/Gobs of Goblins responded. Realizing my family wasn't the picture-perfect loving family I had always believed it was. My parents weren't always too strict, so I idolized them, and my siblings tolerated me most of the time, which seemed better than what my friends had. Took me years to realize that what they were doing wasn't love. It was backhanded and cruel in ways that made me vulnerable. I always thought I was the problem and deserved any anger or backlash I got, even when I knew LD done nothing wrong. I just thought that they would never hurt me, so there must be a reason they're upset. Eventually I learned that mental abuse is still abuse. Even if they rarely laid a hand on me, which still happened, especially with my dad, they were still causing me harm. Only really realized it when I got into my current relationship and was loved unconditionally and not ever treated harshly, instead communicated with and worked with. You/the_merciless_potato responded. I used to watch a lot of gore on gore subs. That continued until one video I saw just undid all the desensitizing I had done until then. It was a father hanging himself in front of a mirror and recording it because his wife left him for another man and he wanted to guilt her by killing himself. He talks a bit into the camera, then prepares everything, kicks the chair and hangs himself. He starts twitching around because he used a very thin rope and was barely off the ground. He was likely in a lot of pain. I thought it couldn't get any worse when a small boy, maybe 7 years old, walks into frame. It was his son and I didn't expect him to understand what was going on, but he did. The boy held his father's hand and cried. When that didn't help stop his father from twitching around like a fish in the air, he started to try and push the chair back under his feet. All that while still crying. The video ends there, but he ultimately failed to save his father because a commenter confirmed that the father had died. He died right in front of his son, who was too small to have been left alone in this world, and very, very unfortunately, the child was big enough to understand and remember what he just saw and to remember that he failed. I never watched gore ever again, and I'm pretty sensitive to gore now. I wouldn't say it broke me, but it was the saddest video LVE ever seen. You/deleted responded. Backstory. I am male, and I identify as such. I have all my arms and legs and fingers and toes, and everything works. In short, no disabilities that would prevent me from doing anything that everyone else does. Okay, now the breaking thing. In spite of nothing physically wrong with me, I was never any good at sports. Truth is, I sucked at it. And after years of trying and falling steadily behind everyone else, I realized that it just wasn't the thing for me. Trouble is, my parents could never accept that. I was the boy, all my sibs were girls, so I was supposed to be athletic. When I said that just wasn't the thing for me to do, they tried to force it on me. Now, one of my sisters, Sherry, not her real name, in a cosmic joke being played on me, was athletic. She was everything athletically that my parents demanded. You/LazyBee7349 responded. After a horrible workday of being injured and being abused by my manager at the time, I took a lethal combination of pills. I didn't know this is basically a death sentence, Xanax and oxycodone for the pain. Thought, why not? I'll have a little wine too. That tiny bit of wine got me in a state where I swear I was speaking tongues and doing weird shit with my hands. I no longer had thoughts, just basically my inner voice in what sounded like an empty room with a booming echo. I tried going to the bathroom and just collapsed on the floor. Didn't know it at the time, but I was dying of a drug overdose. The chilling part was how peaceful I felt, Like I could just have the best sleep of my life if I closed my eyes. IDK what it was, but I think my will to live started kicking in with two vivid images. I pictured my mom finding out her 30-year-old daughter died of an accidental overdose, and I couldn't stand for her not only process that news, but this was not the way I wanted to go. The image of me just being lifeless on some cold tile floor, smeared makeup, and no time left. No way. My boyfriend, now fiancé, came in at the point I was slowly starting to get up, and he burst into tears, and held me in a way I'm convinced healed me. Fucked me up for a long time. I avoid opiates altogether now. Xanax and alcohol, never combine. You/deleted responded. Over the last few years, my mum was diagnosed with terminal cancer. My 21-year-old brother had some sort of mental breakdown and ended up being arrested for sending malicious emails to the police. He broke bail conditions and ended up in prison on remand waiting for a court date. Because of COVID, court dates kept being pushed back. It's likely that when he got to court he would have been let out with time served. My brother allegedly ended his life whilst still in custody. He was 22 by then. The inquest is still ongoing. I was living with my partner and his dad at the time. I then found my partner's dad passed away one morning. I spent months supporting my mum in and out of hospital, whilst also supporting my partner and helping him deal with the aftermath of his dad passing and the farm having to be sold. My mum lost her balance and fell whilst going up 2 steps to her bedroom. It took 3 hours for the ambulance to get to us. By that time she wouldn't have made the trip to the hospital, and passed with me holding her hand. My partner and I split up. I had no job and no home, and my head was a mess. I spent a long time homeless, sleeping in a tent, caravan, my car, and sofa surfing where I could. You/deleted responded. I have an inoperable brain tumor. I was 17 when it actually popped up on my scans, but because my biological mother hated me so much as a child and had this war going on with me, she didn't pursue any further treatment or tell me about it. She lied and said it was excess brain fluid, which if I had known then what I know now would have saved me. It's only now that it's become something life-threatening and she's playing dumb. She knew that this thing was there, it maybe stayed dormant for a while, but I could have gotten much earlier intervention if she had just told the truth. Instead she had me convinced that my seizures and headaches were me being dramatic. She spread other lies about me, all in the name of not being wrong and getting sympathy. I knew she had a pathological side to her, but finding out she lied about this and is now pretending she knows nothing, it's breaking me. I miss our nights where LD make dinner and we would watch our favorite shows together. I can't stand to watch them anymore because of her. Thinking about her hurts. I might lose my leg and ability to swallow because the tumor grew too much in the wrong spot in my brain. If I had early intervention, this might not even needed to have happened. It may have, it may not have. But for a parent to hide vital information like this just so they won't be wrong and could keep the image of being a good mother, you/Slyflyer responded. My older sister manipulated me and the people around me until I went off to college. She lied to her teachers using me to gain pity from them. They were cold to me when they were eventually my teachers, calling me out in class for getting answers wrong. She lied to our neighbors and that was the first time I caught her red-handed doing so. I told my mother and she decided for the sake of my sister's reputation to not make my sister tell them she had lied. I don't think she really believed me. She claimed after a month that she spoke with one of the neighbors, but she never made my sister tell anyone the truth out of fear of embarrassing her. My sister would throw such violent tantrums when the family didn't accept her narrative. I went away to college, but my sister didn't, so all of the years I went to high school my sister was still in the house. It was only after I left the state for college that my mother eventually admitted to me that it had come out in my sister's therapy that she was manipulating me. The therapist had figured this out while I was a freshman in high school, so all those years of my teachers being cold to me, my mother knew the truth. It took her more than 6 years to admit it to me. My sister is now married to a man who had a child from a previous marriage. She's good with the kid, but her husband is showing signs that he is being manipulated. My mother and I are trying to patch things over. You/National Cry 3777 responded. The night that I made a CPS report against my egg donor, I do not consider her to be my mother. I have 15-year-old sisters who live with my egg donor. They've confided in me about the psychological abuse she inflicts on them, and it matched up perfectly to the abuse that she inflicted on me when I was their age. Egg donor had just gotten done yelling at them and throwing profanities their way. My sisters are a part of the LGBTQ community, and that has been the main issue. Both my sisters were sobbing and were attempting to run out of the house because they feared for their safety. She would get physically whenever we'd tried to get away from her. They asked me to get CPS involved themselves because they were scared to continue to live with her. One of them self-harms, and they both attempt to run away whenever egg donor causes trouble. Now, I'm struggling to find an affordable lawyer to help me explore my options in keeping them safe. It hasn't been easy since the only evidence I have is text messages between my sisters, my own experience living with our egg donor, and the fact that they live in my uncle's house who is a hoarder and got arrested for DV/ISA faithlessness 1844 responded. A friend of mine went on a trip to Jamaica in 2021. He called me one day and told me he was bring some stuff back for me. Then a couple days later he called me in a panic, said he was in trouble, he was on the run and something might happen to him. I thought he was tripping, like someone had drugged him or something. I couldn't reach him after that and didn't know what to do. I finally got in contact with his other friend a couple days later and found out he had gotten in trouble with the law and locals after being accused of something heinous. Some people set him up, hunted him down and beat him so bad he ended up badly injured in the hospital. And he was found hanging in the hospital room while in police custody. He was my closest friend at the time and this sent me into a deep depression. I'll never know what truly happened. Our last phone call haunted me for a long time and I blamed myself for being helpless in the situation. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Leave your own stories down below, I would love to read them. If you would like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe, it helps me out greatly.